If somebody brought a camera in to the gym or pulled a phone out, dude, I'd run them out of the gym, or I would take their phone and throw it across the gym. I just had no patience for it. I'm like, I'm not here to be filmed. I'm not here, unless I was doing a shoot for one of my sponsors. I'm like, dude, we're here to train. So put your phone up and focus on the workout.
Starting with training. So when I hear the name Branch Warren, I think of hard work and consistency. Like, there really isn't a bodybuilder out there who hasn't seen one of your intense training sessions. Do you feel like that's the only way to truly grow and gain muscle, is to train with that full intensity?
For me personally, yes. If I didn't train with that intensity and train heavy and do what I do, I would never have been a pro bodybuilder. And people say, oh, why do you work so hard? You train so hard. Well, what the hell's wrong with hard work? Imagine you take somebody who has great genetics and they could grow, okay, by training much easier, not near as intense, not near as heavy. But imagine if that person put that same intensity and hard work and lifted the heavy weights, what they would get. That's when you get something we've never seen before. And we've seen that a couple times. It's something I think some of the previous Mr. Olympias, a couple of them, one in particular, I think had those genetics and had that work ethic, and it gave us something we've never seen before or since. So for me personally, there's no other way. Now, I'm not saying for somebody else. I know one of the pros I compete against with my whole career has an incredible career, does not train that intense, does not train that heavy. The dude looks incredible. I can't say a bad thing about him. It works for him.
And one of the biggest things that I've learned with you these last 2 days is that you've really just done what works for you and stuck with it. And I mean, is that not really kind of the way you should do it with this sport?
That's exactly how you should do it. And that's, people want to criticize, oh, why you do this and that. Well, you know what? It works for me. And, bodybuilding, it's not rocket science, guys. It's about getting as much blood into the muscle as possible when you're training, working that muscle to failure, tearing it down, and then recovery. Recovery is proper nutrition, proper supplementation, and plenty of rest. And go back, repeat. And it's just being consistent with those things year after year after year. It's a long marathon. And, they want to say, oh, your form, this and that. Well, I'm in control of my form. I'm in control of the weight at all times. Oh, you use momentum. No, I don't use momentum, dude. I'm in control of the weight. And all I'm doing is I'm trying to do as many repetitions with the maximum amount of weight I can handle until I can't do it anymore. Then I rest, recover, and do it again. And like I said in previous conversations, I was in a seminar one time and somebody kind of challenged me on that. And I said, let me put you this way. How many national championships have you won? None. How many pro shows have you won? How many Arnold Classics have you won? How many Mr. Olympias have you won? Exactly. But you're telling me I'm doing it wrong. And so it's usually the people that haven't been there and done that want to be the first ones to speak up and tell you, somebody who is doing well and has been there and done that they're doing it wrong. So I don't criticize other people with the way they train, and be nice if people could understand, hey, you got to figure out what works for you, and once you figure it out, stick to it. I think that's a big mistake a lot of this new generation does, is they've got all these gurus. When I started, there was no gurus, there was no trainers. I did everything on my own until 2009, and I was self-taught, and I did it myself as far as nutrition and all that goes. So nowadays, you get every contest, these people, guys and girls, they get a different guru, a different trainer, and when they find something that works and they win, then they go change trainers. I'm like, well, it worked for you. Why would you change up? This was working for you. Then they go, the next one, it didn't work out so well. So I found by trial and error, I found out what works, what doesn't work for me, and I stuck to it.
Let's kind of go into, what training split do you feel has worked the best?
Training splits, I think it's just a matter of personal preference. I'll tell you how I did mine. I've done it when I first started training when I was a teenager. I trained 6 days a week. I trained every body part twice a week. Monday was chest, shoulders, triceps. Tuesday was legs, quads, hams, calves. Wednesday was back and biceps. Thursday, repeat. Start back with chest, shoulders, and tries. Sunday we rested. Monday we're back in the gym doing it again.
You weren't sore after the first session?
Bro, you were sore all week. But I was a young kid, man. I remember. You gotta understand, the first time I went to Metroflex, I got to train with Ronnie, this guy Mark, who was Ronnie's workout partner, who got me into working out, and with Brian Dobson, who was the owner of Metroflex and trained all of us. And I remember a couple months into it, I got trained there the whole summer for my first competitions, And I asked a question. I was like, man, why are we doing it like this? And why are we doing so much? And Mark slapped me in the back of the head and he said, shut the fuck up, don't ask no questions, and do what we do. I did, and guess what? It worked. So sometimes you just don't need to overthink it. And you know, the point they were trying to get across is be consistent. You know, hard ass work and heavy weight, there ain't no substitute. And I wouldn't have done it in any other way. As far as back to the training split, I started off 6 days a week like that. You stayed sore all the time. I mean, you just stayed tore down. When I started going to school, working my way through school, it's 1920. I didn't have 6 days a week to dedicate to the gym. You know, if I'm gonna actually get through college and pass. So I cut it back to 4 days a week. And by this time, you know, Dorian, I've been reading. I used to read everything I get my hands on. You know, training, nutrition. You know, I educated myself about what a protein, carb, a fat is, how your body assimilated them, how you use them, all this stuff, and just educating myself with everything I could find. And I started studying Dorian, and you know, the way he was training, well, he would do, you know, the 1 set to failure, boom, next exercise. And you know, I started looking at that. And I mean, we trained intense, super intense. He was able to generate enough intensity of that one working set to get everything he needed to get done. So I tried that for a little bit, and it worked. But for me, and I just want to be in the gym. I want to do more. You know, sometimes, like, you know, when I trained today, I did back. We did a heavy drop set to failure. I felt I needed another set, so I did another set. And I didn't ever want to just put myself in a box and be too, you know, rigid with my training. So sometimes you got to go by feel. So I cut back to 4 days a week. When I did that, I got bigger and stronger, faster than I ever had. All right, and then the light goes off. All right, ding, ding, ding. All right, I'm on to something here. You know, I'm giving myself more time to rest and recover. I'm training each body part every 7 days instead of twice in 6 days. And it worked. So eventually that schedule turned into, you know, 5 days a week. And once I turned pro and I got a different schedule, and what I did then was, the reason I did that was I was able to prioritize my body parts I need to bring up by doing 5 days a week. So if I need to bring my upper body up, I prioritize that on a Monday. And I train, you know, my back or my chest or whatever it is I was focusing on to bring those up. You know, shoulders was my first priority to bring up, because of my legs have such outstanding sweep and such size. You've got to have broad shoulders. You know, if you got crazy legs, man, you got to have broad shoulders. It ain't going to work. So I brought my delts up, got them capped off. Next thing I need to do, I need to bring my back up. So I came up with a plan. I prioritized my back training, and it took a few years, but I brought my back up. Whenever all those things came up, I started winning big shows.
Something that's always stood out to me, like with your physique, is like the granite hard conditioning, paired with like the deep striations in your quads, especially quads and hamstrings. And outside of genetics, do you feel like this look is achieved by prioritizing specific lifts and intensity patterns, like more like people who say like, I don't need to squat or I don't need to deadlift? Like, do you feel like those lifts really gave you that muscle, that density?
100%. You can look at physiques on stage, and if you know how they train, the physique they present on stage is a direct reflection of how they train in the gym. You look at guys like Dorian, for instance. He trained heavy, he trained super intense, and look at how his physique looked. He looked like he was granite hard. Anybody that ever saw Dorian compete at the Olympia back in the day, when he walked on stage, contest was over. It was lights out. I mean, he was just insane. You know, was he the prettiest bodybuilder? No, but he was the best bodybuilder. And that was a direct, I think, reflection because of his attitude in the gym, the way he trained. You know, his nutrition was on point, and he went in the gym, and ain't nobody outworked that dude when he was in the gym. And that's who I modeled my career after and looked up to. I'm like, that's me right there. And I like that look too. And I wanted that grainy, hard, nasty look. When I walked out on stage, I wanted everybody to gasp and be like, oh shit. And it's over, done deal. So he inspired me with his look and with his training. And I took that with how we did things at Metroflex. And I came up with my own version of that. And you know, I got that grainy, dense look. It's how you train. It's years and years of that high intensity, hard training, balls to the wall with heavy weight. And that's how you build it. You build that dense, grainy muscle. And when you get super shredded, it has a completely different look than someone who doesn't train like that.
Not a lot of top level pros that compete together are going to be seen like training consistently. So something like like seeing you and Johnny, like why is having a training partner important to you? And also like, was it ever kind of like, did things ever get heated when you guys were like dieting and training for the same show? 'Cause you're kind of like competing, training with your competition in a sense.
You know, people, I've been asked this question more times than I can remember over the years. Johnny and I trained together the first time, I believe, in 2001 for the national championship. We had a mutual friend, and he said, he goes, hey man, he goes, I'll see Johnny in the gym, you know, and we knew each other, but we were both amateurs, and we'd compete against each other before. And of course, Johnny beat me every time as an amateur. I was, you know, he was a light heavyweight, I was a heavyweight, and I never beat him as an amateur. And so we had a mutual friend, and he goes, hey man, he goes, aren't you doing the nationals? I go, yeah. He goes, so's Johnny. He goes, why don't you two idiots get together and train together? He goes, ain't nobody else in the gym can hang with either one of you. You guys will be great for each other. And I was like, all right. And I guess he said something to Johnny, and Johnny came in the next day, and he's like, hey man, you doing the nationals? I said, yeah. I said, you know, get ready together for it? And he goes, let's do it. And we started training together. So it was, I couldn't have asked for a better training partner. People ask, well, how did you, you know, compete against each other and work out together? And the answer is very easy. It's just mutual respect. You know, when we're in the gym, I'm looking at him and I'm like, this is my competition right here. You know, if I can't beat this guy, I ain't got a chance at winning the show. So, and he did the same thing. And so whatever, he's super competitive, and he's one of the strongest dudes on the planet, pound for pound. It was perfect. You know, his weaknesses were my strong points and vice versa. And what happened on the stage, we never brought to the gym. You know, I have too much respect for the man, and as a bodybuilder, and most importantly, as a friend. And he's one of the few people that I would call a friend in this world. I know a lot of people, and Johnny's a friend. And I venture to say I probably wouldn't have been quite as good as I was if I didn't have him out there breathing down my neck for 17 years. Training partners are not always a good thing. You know, somebody, they're not on time, they don't show up, they bitch and complain, and they don't give 100%. If they don't contribute to the workout, then that's not a positive, you know. I had a lot of guys who tried to train with me over the years, and I kicked them to the curb really quick because I had no tolerance for someone if they had to show up on time. They had to be ready to go to war, be ready to work. And if they didn't, it wasn't going to be good.
Moving on to food. I remember seeing a photo of you like at Teen Nationals. This is before we like met in person. So obviously, with that being said, you've been competing at a very early age. What was your diet like when you first started out? Like when you first started out bodybuilding?
Man, you know, cardio. I would do cardio. I think I'd do an hour and a half of cardio a day back then, which I hated. I don't know a bodybuilder on this planet that likes doing cardio. And my diet, man, I would do egg whites and oatmeal in the morning, and I put it all in the same bowl because I had to cook my own food, and so I put the least amount of effort into it as possible. And so I would cook the egg whites and oatmeal in the same bowl, and I would usually dump some fruit in there with it. That was breakfast, and I just eat it out of a salad bowl with a big spoon. Then the rest of the day, I would eat canned tuna fish, and I would eat chicken, rice, and potatoes, and that was it. So it was just pretty basic stuff. I didn't eat any kind of red meat back then, no game or anything. I didn't know. And as I educated myself about nutrition and, you know, nutrients and different grades of protein and different kinds of carbohydrates, simple and complex, all this stuff, then I educated myself about the body, how your body uses these nutrients. Then that's when I started to change my diet, and you know, I started incorporating, you know, like bison and elk and venison and, you know, fish and turkey and all these different sources of protein. Because at the end of the day, I think I was talking to Dorian one time, and I think we both agreed on this. It's like, oh, people say I got to eat fish to get lean instead of chicken or something else. That's complete bullshit. Yeah. Makes no difference. And I'm eating bison, and I got just as lean as I did when I was eating chicken and fish. So makes no difference.
Or the fish makes my skin thin?
Yeah, I've heard all kinds of nonsense, and it makes no difference. I'm telling you guys. You think it does, it doesn't. So, and you know, if it's chicken, fish, turkey, whatever, it's all, if you're not getting in shape, it's because you ain't doing what you're supposed to do.
Bodybuilding was somewhat, still is, but more mainstream now, kind of a niche sport to choose as a teenager, especially in like the early 90s. I mean, I guess you had magazines to look at, But like, how did you learn? Like, how did you learn to diet and like how did you learn about the sport?
I saw my first bodybuilding magazine when I was 14. I think Rich Gaspari was on the cover of it. I remember looking at it and I was like, wow, I didn't know anything about bodybuilders. And I remember looking at it going, wow, man, a man can actually look like this. You know, I'm a country boy. The most muscular thing I'd ever seen was a horse, you know? So, you know, of course my dad was a big guy or whatever, but he wasn't like, didn't look like a bodybuilder. And, so I'm like, I was pretty impressed, you know? I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, man. I remember thinking, wow, I wish I looked like that. But I didn't have a clue about how to go about it other than you're supposed to lift weights. And it wasn't until I met this guy, Mark, at this local gym I used to slip in the back door and train. He kind of took me under his wing, showed me how to train a little bit. And then he wrote down some stuff. I remember he took a piece of notebook paper and kind of scribbled down some stuff to eat. And I don't want to say it was a diet, but basically I just started eating more. You know, most teenagers eat like crap. And so basically it was just like, hey, lay off the pizzas and burgers and Cokes and try to eat a little better food, which I did. And I was training for football, and I think I gained like 27 pounds that summer, just eating food and working out. And that was all I was doing. But when you're young, you can do that. And so that's how it all started. And then when I got ready for my first competition, they wrote down a basic program for me to follow. And you know, it was just like, hey, eat this and don't ask no questions. And so that's what I did. And I did it for, I think I dieted 8 or 9 weeks for that first show, and I won. And I remember going to the competition, I'm thinking, wow, I just don't want to get last place. You know, like, as long as I beat somebody, all right, cool. And I think I had 16 kids in my class, and there was a lot, like a lightweight class and a heavyweight class in the teenage division. And I think the heavyweights had like 6 or 7, lightweights had I think 16, and I won my class, and then I won the overall. And I remember I was like, wow, I actually won this thing. And but I still wasn't at that point. I was like, you know, I was playing sports. I was more interested in playing sports than I was bodybuilding. And bodybuilding was just something cool to do during the summer to stay in shape for, you know, it made you better for sports. And then when I went to Metroflex, got serious, trained, made some serious gains. And at that point is when I started, okay, I need to learn. I realized how important the nutrition was. And that's when I started educating myself about nutrition.
So when it comes to food, most bodybuilders that I talk to find themselves sticking with the basics, not reinventing the wheel too much. What are some tried and true foods that you've used throughout your entire competitive career?
Chicken, egg whites, oatmeal, rice, and potatoes. Sweet potatoes or white potatoes, either one. Can't go wrong, guys. So that's about as basic as it gets. And of course, water. And that's about as basic as it gets. Can't go wrong with any of that stuff. Now, you know, since then I learned you can eat fish, and I grew up hunting from a very young age. So I love wild game, and wild game is probably the best source of protein you can get. It's completely natural. There's no hormones, no antibiotics, none of that stuff. It's low in fat. You know, bison meat is great meat, and so is elk, so is, you know, venison. And so it's probably the best meat you can get, actually, way better than stuff you get at the supermarket. And so I always included that in my program. And as I learned more about it, and I pretty much, you know, those sources, the wild game, would constitute a bulk of my protein, you know, through my late amateur and all through my pro career.
What was the heaviest you ever gotten in an off season?
My heaviest weight ever was 272 at 5'7". So I was strong as shit, but I was out of breath walking up the stairs. So, which I didn't like. I always prided myself on being in very good, you know, cardiovascular shape. I'm very active. I've always prided myself on being not the average bodybuilder who's just a big lug and can't move. You know, I go hunting in the mountains, and, you know, we kill elk and we pack them out on our backs and stuff. So at 272, none of that was happening. But I set, I think, all my personal strength records during that time. So, yeah, you know, that's just, I knew that's what I need to do. You know, I was a young pro, and I was just trying to get put on as much size as I could to improve, because I knew I needed to get bigger, and I had some weak points I needed to bring up. So, man, I got big, and I got strong, and I grew, and it paid off.
Could you give us an example of what your diet was like deep into an off season?
As far as my off-season diet, man, I ate more calories, and I grew into when I was preparing for a show than I did in the off-season. I actually grew into my diet as I was getting ready for competition. I actually got bigger, and grew into it as I got ready for competition. I didn't lose that much weight usually. So off-season diet, I ate good. I did a lot of appearances. I still do a lot of appearances, and but back then I did a lot of guest posing. So you got to stay in shape. No one wants to see a fat ass on stage guest posing. That's not what people come for. So as a pro bodybuilder, you're representing the companies you're representing, and yourself. So I always try to stay pretty lean. Therefore, my diet was pretty similar to a pre-contest diet. I just ate more carbs. I ate a lot of carbs, and plus, too, once a week, twice a week, if I wanted a burger or something, I'd go eat it. During football season, I love watching football. We'd either go to the game or we'd watch it here at the house, and I'd usually order a pizza and drink a Guinness, and life was good.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, some of the guys really in the era, like in your 2000s, that was kind of when the guys were getting really chunky, like in the off season. Remember that like Malcolm in the Middle episode? Like, so you were kind of like defying that a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did that not make you nervous like?
What, as far as being, what do you mean?
Because like you didn't get as big as everybody else, like, because like these guys were like.
No, they got big. They got 300 plus pounds. A lot of these dudes. I mean, there was dudes that was 310, 320, and but they'd have to kill themselves to get in shape. And once again, that went back to just being self-taught. I'm thinking, all right, why do you want to put on 50 pounds of excess weight, which is fat, and then have to turn and diet all that off? That's just more work. And like, that makes no sense. I'm like, okay, if you can gain 50 pounds, but okay, 25 of it's muscle and yet you keep, okay, cool. But it never worked that way. They gained 50 and they diet away 48 pounds of it. They gained 2 pounds. Like, why not gain 10 pounds and put on 2 pounds of muscle and lose 8? I never really understood that whole concept. Yeah, you got to gain weight, man, to grow. You got to eat excess amount of calories to grow. But at a certain point, come on, man, you're a pro bodybuilder. You still gotta represent and look like a bodybuilder. I mean, some of these guys will show up and look like sumo wrestlers, and that just, to me, it's a personal pride thing. I want to look good year round. This is I love training, I think, more than I love competing, and I really love competing. But so I want to stay in shape.
How different is the sport now compared to it was when you started? 2001 is when you got your card?
When the Nationals, November 2001, fast forward 18, 19 years, it's completely different. Social media changed everything. In my day, I hit it perfect, as far as bodybuilding goes. My generation and the guys that came up with me, we rode it to the very top as far as, the contracts and endorsements and all this stuff, the heyday of bodybuilding. I think back in my day, if you were good and you were successful on stage, you got a supplement contract, you got a publishing contract with one of the magazines, you had a clothing contract, a shoe contract, equipment contract, whatever, and you were good. You actually got to live as a pro athlete and bodybuild and do appearances and compete. And if you were a top 5 guy, you were going to be okay if you had half a brain. So social media came and changed it all, man. So now there's these guys now, just because you're a top bodybuilder, doesn't matter, man. If you don't have good social media, I think companies are getting wise to social media too, because it's not just about having a bunch of millions of followers. You got to have interaction. You have to have okay, you got 4 or 5 million followers. Do those followers convert to sales? If we endorse you and pay you X number of dollars, okay, can you convince your people, hey, this is our good product? Will they support that product and support you? So a lot of times that's not the case with some of the guys. And bodybuilders generally bodybuilders are not great at social media. So there's a few that are, but most of the guys aren't. That's just not what they do. They're focused on training and eating and competing. And so without the magazines, that puts them at a real disadvantage, because they have to, it's self-promotion. And a lot of the guys aren't good at that. And so that hurts them. And it's just a different world now, man, than what it used to be. I think without the magazines, I think what our sport lacks now is it lacks heroes. It lacks superstars. Yeah, those guys are still there, but they're not developed the way they used to be. Back in the day, the Ronnie Colemans, the Jay Cutlers, the Kai Greens, myself, the list goes on and on. Dennis Wolf, all these guys, because of the magazines, they covered us, right? And they put us out there, and they helped create that. Also the supplement companies, back in, some of the supplement companies I was with, they did a ton of advertising in the magazines. We're always doing shoots and stuff. So they created, the superstars and the heroes of the sport. Every sport needs that. I think without the magazines, we've lost some of that, because the top, a lot of the top guys, they're not focused on that. They realize you got to have it, but without the magazines and the companies, behind them, it's really hard to create that. And then the flip side of it is, you got a lot of these, I call them Insta famous people. It's like the Kim Kardashians of the world. They have zero talent, zero accomplishments, but they're Insta famous. Now, I ain't hating on her. I ain't hating on any of them. More power to them, man. They're making money and they're doing great, but they really haven't done anything. And so you get this guy who's Arnold Classic champion, maybe even a Mr. Olympia, won all these competitions, been training for 20 years, looks incredible, best built dude on the planet. But then you got this guy over here who hasn't done anything, but he's really good on social media. He's getting paid. This guy's making peanuts. So that's the world we live in today. I will say this, for the few guys that know how to work it and know how to use social media, they're doing better than ever. I was really anti-social media when it started. I just didn't understand the value of it. My wife was always like, hey, we need to do this and take these pictures and film your workouts. If somebody brought a camera in to the gym or pulled a phone out, dude, I'd run them out of the gym, or I would take their phone and throw it across the gym. I just had no patience for it. I'm like, I'm not here to be filmed. I'm not here, unless I was doing a shoot for one of my sponsors. I'm like, dude, we're here to train. So put your fucking phone up and focus on the workout. And thank God my wife had the foresight to see, hey, this is important. We need to do this. So, she would tell my workout partners and the dudes in the gym, hey, film Branch. And they'd be like, oh shit, are you serious? Because if I caught him, dude, it was going to be bad. But I would go and I would look at the media when it first started. I'm like, who the hell filmed this? And I finally figured out what she was doing. But to me, I'm like, how's this hashtag shit gonna make me money? And so I had no use for it. But once I finally realized, okay, this is important, and I saw the direction the magazines are going, and I started cooperating with it. And thank God I did, and thank God she had the foresight to see it, because we've done pretty well with social media. And my company now, Wicked Cutz, is social media based. We do all of our advertising and marketing there, and it's doing really well. And that's because of social media. I've been retired now. I've still been able to stay relevant. As of a few other guys in my generation, they're still very much relevant and part of the scene, even though they're not competing anymore because of social media. So I think social media's allowed me to live beyond my competitive career.